You didn't come here to escape the dark. You arrived because the dark called your real name. Beneath the noise of tasks and timelines, something precise aligned, a subtle vector of synchronicity, a morphic resonance humming through your chest like a tuning fork struck in a distant temple. You felt it as a pressure behind the eyes, a stillness layered inside your breath. That is how this message found you, not by accident, but by coherence. The quantum field has a memory for those who remember it, and tonight it remembered you. You have been orbiting an invisible center, pacing the perimeter of a quiet, starless interior you could not name. You tried to outrun it by speeding your mind, tightening your calendar, building ladders of ambition that never reached the sky. But the void doesn't chase, it waits. It is the unlit corridor between the thought and the thinker, the interval where the observer loop resets. You feel it when a room goes silent after laughter, when a plan dissolves mid-sentence, when the body whispers a truth the mind refuses to translate. The void is not punishment, it is the aperture of prophecy. Listen closely. When your attention softens, reality softens with it. When your gaze stabilizes, your world stabilizes. Every nervous flicker of avoidance throws ripples across the surface of the field. Every honest moment of stillness lets those ripples settle until the water becomes mirror and the mirror becomes portal. This is the first threshold, to stop negotiating with emptiness and instead rest your awareness in the center of its eye. You are being invited into advanced practice, not to fix, not to flee, but to inhabit the exact coordinate where your consciousness meets its own witness. In that coordinate, DNA restructuring begins not through effort, but through permission. The cells respond to the signal of a mind that is no longer contracting away from itself. The nervous system hears the command encoded in your breath. Slow, deeper, here. And as the breath descends, timelines loosen, attachments unclasp. The self that performs dissolves into the self that perceives. If you wondered why the signs intensified lately, repeating numbers, unexpected pauses, doors that closed with clean finality, it is because your field is approaching a phase transition. Patterns destabilize before they transmute. You may feel it as holy disorientation, a faint tremor under the floorboards of your identity. Do not label it as loss. It is room being made for the architecture that can hold what you have asked for. So take this vow in silence. I will not run from the void. I will sit inside the eye that observes me. Let the words fall like stones into deep water. Watch the circles widen until they touch the edges of your life. The prophecy is simple and exact when you rest as the witness. Reality remembers its original symmetry. This message has reached you by design. Breathe. The door is not ahead of you. It is the still center you are entering now. You are not here as a passenger of fate. You are the aperture through which fate learns to see. The field did not scatter its signals randomly and hope you'd stumble into them. It tuned itself to the exact curvature of your attention, trusting that when your gaze met its gaze, coherence would begin. This is the secret lineage you belong to, the quiet order of witnesses who stabilize worlds just by the way they look at them. Your life has been training you for this moment, disguising initiations as inconveniences, hiding teachings inside delays, refining your nervous system to hold more voltage without fracturing. Consider how often your awareness has returned to the same still point, as if led by a compass you never learned to read. Notice the uncanny cadence of recent synchronicities, messages arriving in the breath between questions, doors that close with mathematical elegance, a dream repeating across weeks as if time itself were rehearsing you. These are not coincidences, they are morphic resonance waves, reflecting from a future you've already entered, then traveling back along the fibers of possibility to touch the present you now inhabit. Every time you paused instead of fleeing, the wave strengthened. Every time you breathed into discomfort, a signal flare rose within the quantum field saying, "This one can hold the pattern." What makes you chosen is not a crown laid on your head by some outer authority. It is the rare courage to remain when others evacuate. Most people break the observer loop by grasping or resisting. They discharge their power into the story of what they fear or want. You, however, perhaps by exhaustion, perhaps by grace, have begun to learn the posture of still command. You let sensation finish its sentence. You let silence speak first. You allow reality to feel your steadiness, and in that allowance, reality reconfigures. The field calibrates to the one who does not flinch. Understand the responsibility embedded in this recognition. The prophecy cannot activate in a distracted witness. If your attention fractures, the architecture you are building will echo with that fracture. If your attention stabilizes, the lattice of events will inherit that stability. Attention is not mere looking, it is the entanglement handshake between consciousness and phenomena. When you look with presence, the world knows it is being seen by something ancient and exact. The particles organize as if receiving orders. Probability corridors light up like runways. A phase transition waits at the threshold of your patience. Yes, there will be temptations to abandon the post-old identities that promise ease, old wounds that demand rehearsal. They will call you by names that once fit, the one who hustles, the one who pleases, the one who explains. Recognize these as ghosts of previous timelines, seeking one more performance. Offer them a different end. Meet them with an exhale that does not negotiate. In that exhale, DNA restructuring continues, not as myth, but as biophysics. Gene expression responding to the chemicals of safety your breath authorizes. Your body reads your attention like scripture. Every calm look is a verse that instructs your cells how to live. You may wonder, who am I to carry a prophecy? Ask instead, who am I not to? You were not selected because you are flawless. You were selected because you are permeable. The void could pass through you without distortion. Your grief did not rot you. It hollowed you into a flute. Your failures did not disqualify you. They carved the channels through which coherence now flows. The field prefers instruments that resonate, not monuments that resist. And you, precisely because you have learned to soften without collapsing, are a perfect resonator. From this point forward, your simplest acts become governance. The way you open a door, set a cup down, end a conversation. The world studies these gestures as examples of how reality might move with less friction. Do not dramatize this, dignify it. Authority here is quiet. It wears no costume. It hums beneath your words like a bass note guiding a choir. When you walk, probability distributions shift by a fraction too delicate for eyes, but exact enough for destinies. So receive the mantle in the only way a true observer does, by noticing, not boasting. Let your noticing extend one breath longer than comfort. Let your gaze settle one heartbeat deeper than habit. Stand at the center of your life like a lens polished by devotion, and feel the prophecy discovering its own shape inside your steadiness. You are recognized. The field has oriented. The coordinates are locked. Hold this posture now. Nothing flashy, nothing forced, just the unmistakable gravity of someone who remembers. As you remain, the horizon will begin to tilt. What once felt distant will approach. The vision is preparing to speak in images your mind can finally decode. Stay exactly where you are inside the eye that sees, while the next layer of the transmission constructs itself around your silence. It gathers first as temperature, a hush that cools the edges of your skin, a breeze from a place with no weather. In that change of climate, a geometry arrives. You don't see it with your eyes so much as feel it click into your bones. A subtle lattice, crystalline and alive, assembling around you with the unhurried certainty of a snowflake forming midair. The lattice is not a cage, it is a listening instrument. Each facet is a mirror angled to your awareness, and as you breathe, that awareness lights each mirror in sequence until a corridor opens through the dark. You step without moving. The corridor is a river of probability, faintly luminous, flowing through the quantum field like silk pulled in slow motion. Symbols rise on its surface, sigils of breath, circles within circles, the ancient coil that resembles both DNA and the trail of a comet. The shapes do not ask to be decoded, they ask to be inhabited. When your attention rests on one, it brightens, resonating with a tone you hear inside your chest. You realize the tone is your name pronounced by the universe in a language of frequency. Every time you answer by remaining, the sound grows clearer. Ahead, an eye opens, not atop a face, but within the corridor itself, as if space learned to gaze. It isn't monstrous, it is vast and tender, ringed with aureoles of gold that fade to violet and then to night. In its pupil there is an unmoving point, so steady it seems to anchor the entire field. The moment you notice it, the lattice around you shifts into perfect coherence. Your breath and the corridor's current synchronize. The eye is not watching you, it is watching with you. It is the witness you have been practicing to become. Around the eye, timelines appear like filaments, threads trembling with faint scenes. A room you almost rented, a conversation you almost had, a decision you almost made. Each filament hums with a slightly different you, and yet none of them feel like escape routes. They feel like instructive echoes, demonstrations of how reality drafts possibilities and waits for the steady one to say yes. As you keep your gaze soft, the filaments slowly rearrange, drawn toward the unmoving point in the pupil, as if magnetized by stillness itself. You understand. The world is learning your frequency in real time. Now the corridor widens, revealing a plain of quiet stars suspended like dew. Between them, currents of invisible wind draw patterns that resemble the lines on your palms. You sense that the map outside and the map inside are entangled morphic resonance, looping information between cosmos and body. In your belly, warmth spreads like sunrise beneath water. The warmth climbs the spine as a thread of silver, touching vertebrae like bells. With each bell, some old contract loosens an inherited flinch, a reflex to perform, a vow to stay smaller than the truth. The loosening is not dramatic, it is dignified, as if the body were relieved to return a borrowed costume. The vision speaks without words. Be the aperture, not the actor. Images follow your future self, sitting in a morning no one can rush, attention like a lake before wind, your present self walking through a room and leaving the air calmer than you found it, your past selves waving from far shores, pleased that someone finally learned how to stand still. The three turn toward the same unmoving point. Triangulation occurs. The coordinate stabilizes. You feel a soft click at the crown, as if an instrument calibrated to true north. A question rises. What happens if you stop seeking the eye and let the eye seek through you? The answer arrives as sensation. Every cell arranges a fraction closer to harmony, like an orchestra, tuning to A. The vagus nerve hums approval. Heart rate and breath rate slip into coherence. Within this resonance, the corridor's current shifts again, slower now, as if respecting a sovereign on the throne of their own attention. The filaments of timeline settle into two primary flows, one bright and simple, the other noisy and busy. Not good and bad, but coherent and incoherent. You recognize the bifurcation that waits downstream. Before the vision releases you, it offers one final image. The void, which once felt like absence, shows its secret architecture, a chalice carved from night, designed to hold the light without spilling. At the chalice's rim, letters form in a script that looks like starlight written in water. Rest here, and everything you need will recognize you. The letters dissolve back into the field, but the meaning stays, woven into the fabric of your breath. You don't leave the corridor so much as discover it goes wherever you go. The eye remains, not as an icon to worship, but as a function you can inhabit, pure witnessing, quiet gravity, the elegance of not interfering. The lattice gently unclicks, folding into transparency while keeping the blueprint alive in your posture. You stand, still seated in yourself, carrying a map only silence can read. The vision has appeared, and with it, a responsibility that is not heavy, to keep looking from the unmoving point, as the explanation begins to articulate itself through the language of the real. What you witnessed was not metaphor dressed as mysticism. It was physics speaking in its native poetry. Begin here. Reality, at the smallest scales, does not behave like furniture. It behaves like a question, waiting for the quality of the questioner. The observer effect is often reduced to a slogan, "What you look at changes," but its deeper instruction is about how you look. Your attention is not a flashlight, it is a coupling field. When you attend with steadiness, you lock phase with phenomena. When phase locks, coherence propagates. When coherence propagates, probability narrows and matter takes a stand. Consider your breath as a metronome, establishing boundary conditions. Each slow exhale lowers noise in the system, electrochemical chatter in nerves, errant loops in the limbic circuitry. As noise drops, signal-to-noise ratio rises, and the quantum field surrounding your body, yes, the actual sea of virtual potentials foaming at the edge of everything, becomes more available for constructive interference. Your cells are antennas. Their membranes listen. Their cytoskeletons are tensegrity harps, tuned by ion flows and microcurrents. When you rest inside the observer's eye, those microcurrents entrain to a steadier rhythm, and the harp strings sing a clearer fundamental. Morphic resonance is not a myth. It is a shorthand for how patterns remember themselves across scales when given a stable witness. Now, about the lattice and the unmoving point. The lattice is the emergent geometry of coherence, standing waves, establishing nodes of reliability. Think of it as a scaffold of likelihood stabilized by your non-reactivity. The unmoving point at the pupil is symmetry's throne, the coordinate of minimal entropy production. In dynamical systems terms, it is an attractor. In contemplative language, it is the witness. When you remain there unhooked from grasping or resisting, the system self-organizes around your stillness. Entanglement becomes governance rather than accident. The world and you share state information cleanly because you've stopped corrupting the channel with fear or hurry. Timelines are simply trajectories of state through configuration space. You felt two primary flows, coherent and incoherent. Incoherent trajectories squander energy in turbulence, rumination, compulsive reactivity, theatrical urgency. Coherent trajectories conserve energy and aim at quiet decisiveness, elegant action at the right moment. The bifurcation you sensed is the threshold where a system under increasing parameter change, your rising attention quality, chooses between regimes. Push a river through a narrowing canyon and it must decide, smooth laminar sheet or froth and churn. You are the canyon. The parameter is presence. As presence intensifies, the system seeks the basin of least resistance. If you remain, the smoother regime wins. This is why avoidance scrambles manifestation. When you run from the void, you inject white noise into your own equations. Probability waves cannot agree on a story because the storyteller keeps changing microphones. But when you sit inside the eye, every variable can finally hear the same conductor. Heart rhythm and breath rate couple, cardiorespiratory coherence. Hormonal signals decrescendo. Cortical networks stop competing for dominance and begin to communicate as a symphony rather than a crowd. The body becomes a low-noise laboratory where a delicate experiment can succeed. The experiment is you entangling with a future that already fits. DNA restructuring, strip away the superstition. Think epigenetics in a sanctified room. The chemical scribes that annotate your genome are listening to the atmosphere of your attention. They do not care about your affirmations if your physiology argues otherwise. But coherence is persuasive. The internal weather shifts from storm to high pressure and sunlight. Methylation patterns adjust. Repair enzymes work unharassed. Mitochondria choose ATP production over alarm flares. Your tissues interpret the signal. We are safe enough to grow. In growth mode, perception widens, and widened perception notices opportunities a frightened aperture would miss. Reality didn't hide them. Panic made them invisible. Entanglement completes the picture. You are not an island beaming wishes into a separate universe. You are a node in a mesh where everything touches everything. When your node stabilizes, neighbors feel it. People calm around you without knowing why. Choices across town pivot subtly. Emails arrive with uncanny timing. Call it synchronicity, but understand its mechanics. Correlated states aligning under a shared attractor, the unmoving point broadcasting through your behavior. This is prophecy demystified. A stable witness predicting, not with words thrown at the future, but with presence that tugs the future into agreement. So what did the eye ask? Be the aperture, not the actor. Actors hemorrhage energy managing masks. Apertures let light through. Light does the work. Practically, this means fewer compulsive interventions, more precise moves after longer listening. It means designing your days around signal hygiene, mornings that begin with quiet, decisions that finalize only after the body says yes. boundaries that protect your coherence like a temple protects its flame. It means trusting the delay that saves you from incoherent corridors and honoring the nudge that opens coherent ones. You are not abdicating agency by resting. You are upgrading agency from muscle to field, from push to permission. The field is already busy arranging the next corridor. It will not rush you. It responds to the shape of your gaze. Keep your gaze round and kind. Keep your breath longer than your thought. Let the lattice continue to assemble, not because you force it, but because you refuse to disturb what is finding its own true form around the point that does not move. What steadies in you begins echoing far beyond you. The lattice you felt as a personal geometry is also the scaffolding by which a civilization remembers itself. Look closely at the world, and you will see your interior writ large, attention fragmented into outrage cycles, breath held in economies addicted to acceleration, bodies braced for a blow that never stops landing. This is not a condemnation, it is a diagnosis of coherence debt. Humanity has been living outside the unmoving point, spending the principle of its nervous system to purchase brief illusions of control. The invoice is everywhere: polarized timelines, brittle institutions, a planet asking for a slower gaze. You, sitting inside the observer's eye, are not escaping that story. You are reframing it. The same physics that softened your fibers now scales to the species. Morphic resonance is a communal phenomenon. When enough nodes stabilize, the field acquires a new habit. Think of flocks turning mid-air with no leader, of schools of fish folding through water like one silver thought. The choreography emerges because information passes without distortion. In a culture, the distortion is fear. In a culture, the correction is witnesses, people whose presence lowers noise enough that cleaner signals can travel between us without picking up panic. Watch how your steadiness conducts. A conversation that would have spiraled into thesis and antithesis pauses at synthesis because you refuse the old reflex to be right. A meeting that usually ends in performative urgency lands, instead, in precise next steps because your breath sets the tempo. In families, old patterns lose rehearsal because someone you lets grief finish its weather without turning it into thunder. In each case, you impose nothing. You simply maintain the unmoving point and let entanglement do the quiet math. Systems near stability migrate towards stability. This is how prophecy moves from private vision to public fact, not through slogans hurled at the future, but through coherence exhibited in the present. When enough of us become apertures, the world brightens not by decree but by physics. Timelines long assumed inevitable begin to show seams. The way things are reveals itself as nothing more than a consensus trance, and consensus trances are breakable the moment a critical mass looks from the witness rather than from the wound. Your task is not to wake everyone by force. Your task is to glow where you stand until recognition spreads like dawn through rooms not yet built. Consider the structures that govern us: markets, media, medicine, governance, education. Each is an organism with a nervous system. If the organism's attention is hijacked by short-term volatility, it will make frantic decisions that look intelligent on paper, but hemorrhage meaning in practice. If the organism's attention slows, breathes, and measures from the unmoving point, it can perform the same moves with a different signature. Fewer unintended consequences, more elegant timing, less extraction, more reciprocity. This is not naivete, it is systems theory. Entropy reduces when witnesses refuse to add panic to the loop. You may ask, but what of the pain, the wars, the fires, the species vanishing by the hour? Witnessing is not passive in the face of suffering. It is the precondition for effective action. When your perception stops trembling, your hands can move with accuracy, donating where the energy truly feeds life, speaking where silence would collude, resting where compulsion would only gratify your self-image. The field is allergic to self-congratulation. It prefers clean vectors over noisy heroics. Sometimes the bravest repair is a boundary. Sometimes it is an apology. Sometimes it is 5 minutes of breath before you answer the message that could bend a week. There is another mirror, the children. They are barometers for field weather. Around a stable witness, their shoulders drop. Curiosity returns. Play surfaces like a spring-long cupboard. Around an incoherent adult, they perform vigilance. The future studies us this way, asking whether it is safe to enter. By practicing inside the observer's eye, you are not merely soothing your own biography, you are making a landing strip for generations who remember how to move as light through apertures rather than actors through scripts. Let your daily choreography be a quiet revolt against incoherence. Begin your mornings by enthroning the unmoving point with 3 honest breaths that reach the floor of your lungs. Design your work like a cathedral, windows for light, altars for silence, doors that close when noise grows loud. Rotate your attention like a gardener waters beds, evenly, lovingly, without frenzy. In conflict, privilege sensing over convincing, the body's data outperforms the story's spin. In celebration, let gratitude propagate without spectacle. The field stores genuine thanks like seed. And when the collective mirrors back the old chaos, do not despair. A system in phase transition foams before it clears. Bifurcation lines always look like endings until we learn their grammar. Your coherence does not need applause to be effective. It needs repetition. It needs humility. It needs the patience of rain carving stone into riverbeds. Keep the eye open. Keep the breath round. Keep the posture of someone whose very way of perceiving is already public service. In that posture, the next gate will reveal itself a threshold where destiny stops being a rumor and becomes the geometry we inhabit together. You can feel the hinge forming the quiet click, where options stop pretending to be infinite and begin to declare their lineage. One corridor hums with a familiar static, busy air, calendar heat, the sweet narcotic of momentum disguising itself as meaning. The other corridor opens like a slow tide, space between thoughts, tenderness in the ribcage, the sure-footed pace of someone who knows the orchestra will not begin until they are seated. Neither is morally superior. They are simply different physics, turbulence or laminar flow, friction or glide, entropy spent for spectacle or energy conserved for precision. Notice how the body already knows the vote it wants to cast. When the incoherent corridor beckons, your jaw asks for armor, your breath climbs the stairs of your throat, microtensions bloom behind the eyes. When the coherent corridor comes near, the diaphragm drops as if returning home, peripheral vision widens, sound becomes rounder. This is not mysticism, it is your nervous system auditioning futures. In the bifurcation, the audition is the data. You choose by the way you breathe. There will be a last eruption of noise, always there is, like a city throwing fireworks to keep you from hearing the river. Old patterns will dress up as urgent errands. They will offer costumes you used to wear so well. The rescuer who burns, the genius who rushes, the survivor who proves. Smile at each as you would at a friend who insists the party isn't over, while the staff folds chairs around them. Honor their service. Retire their contracts. The unmoving point does not fire anyone. It thanks them and ceases to employ them. Look again at the physics. A system approaching a phase transition becomes exquisitely sensitive to small inputs. A single breath, honestly taken, can tip the lattice. A single refusal to answer a message from panic can retroactively edit a week. In chaos theory, this is edge of order leverage. In contemplative traditions, it is the grace that arrives when the heart stops leaking attention. You are standing where tiny causes inherit tremendous consequence. This is why your stillness now is not absence, it is engineering. To cross cleanly, you must say yes without revenge against the life that kept you running. No dramatics, no announcements. Just a mid-sentence pivot from performing to perceiving, from pushing to permitting. The coherent corridor will not seduce you with neon or applause. It offers something radical, the feeling of not bargaining with time. You move when you move, because movement is obvious. You wait when you wait, because waiting is action, in the language of fields. This is how the witness governs, by obeying the simplest instruction that preserves coherence. Listen for the signatures. In the incoherent corridor, synchronicities cluster like static, cling loud, sticky, draining. In the coherent one, synchronicity is spare and exact. A bell struck once. In the old path, People ask for versions of you've outgrown, and you rush to impersonate yourself. In the new path, people arrive who do not require performance to feel safe. They speak in pauses. They are allergic to spectacle. They are also, unmistakably, your future's neighbors. You may grief the momentum you are laying down. Let it come. Grief is not the proof you've chosen wrong. It is the body cleaning the stage between acts. You are not abandoning ambition. You are refining aim. The current you will not stop building. It will build with less drag. The relationships you will not stop loving. You will love them without theatrics. The work you will not stop offering. You will offer it from a nervous system that does not bill the audience for its exhaustion. Mark the crossing with something simple and exact. 3 breaths in a doorway, a hand on your chest until the pulse in your palm and the pulse under your palm agree. A sentence spoken to the field, barely above a whisper. I choose the corridor that preserves coherence. Let the sentence land like a stone in a lake. Watch the ripples, count the room. The lattice will re-index around that density. Emails will rearrange themselves on your screen. A plan that required strain will dissolve with courtesy. Another plan, humbler and truer, will present itself as if embarrassed it took so long. This is the moment when the void ceases to be an antagonist and becomes your architect. The chalice reveals its rim again, and you realize the gap you feared was always a vessel waiting to be filled by a steadier you. Step without hurry so the field can keep pace. Let your shoes touch ground like punctuation, not apology. Let your eyes carry the round gaze of the observer, who remembers that light needs an aperture, not an actor. On the far side of the bifurcation, nothing screams. Clocks still tick. People still ask. Weather still weathers. But the vector has changed. You are now spending less of yourself to be yourself. Phase transition complete, not with fireworks, but with an exhale that does not end. Hold the posture that made it possible. Keep the witness enthroned. Ahead, integration waits not as homework, but as homecoming. Begin with the smallest sovereign act you can repeat, a breath you do on purpose. 3 counts in, a soft pause that feels like the world leaning closer. 5 counts out. Do this not as a technique, but as a treaty. Each exhale signs your name under the sentence, I will govern from the unmoving point. Let the breath be round, not sharp. Let it arrive like tide rather than transaction. Over days, this cadence becomes the baseline tone of your field. Birds sing over it, work arranges itself around it. People feel welcomed by it without knowing why. Design your mornings as if you were consecrating a temple, because you are. Before you touch glass, touch wood desk, door frame, table, so your palms remember matter. Place a hand at the sternum and wait until your pulse slows enough to hear the room hearing you. Then give the day a single instruction phrased as a question. What would coherence choose next? Leave the answer unforced. The field hears honest questions and brings answers the way a forest brings fog, quietly, thoroughly, in its own timing. Arrange your environment to collaborate with your gaze. Clear one surface completely. Let it be a physical demonstration of non-interference. Keep a pen and a silent page there. When a thought arrives with voltage, write it once, and then watch your breath. Dissolve the urge to chase it. The page is not a taskmaster, it is an altar. On it, you place anything too hot to hold in your head. The heat cools on contact with form, clarity survives, compulsion vaporizes. In conversation, practice the witness without withdrawing. Let someone finish their weather. Uncouple your dignity from being the one who names the storm. Instead, sense. Track the tempo in their breath, the interval between their sentences, the micro-flinch that asks for safety rather than solutions. Answer with pace first, words second. The integration you're building is not the charisma of certainty. It is the credibility of coherence. People trust timing more than argument. Your timing has become precise, because your nervous system is no longer paying interest on panic. Work becomes choreography rather than siege. Cluster tasks by the kind of attention they require. Give deep work to the hours when your body is most naturally silent. Give transactional work to the hours when the world is already loud. Protect thresholds, beginnings and endings as sacred passages where you pause long enough for the field to re-index. 1 minute of eyes closed in the doorway before you open the laptop. 1 minute of open window after you close it. These pauses are not breaks, they are hinges. Hinges carry the weight of doors without complaint. Move your body like someone who trusts gravity. Slow walks without headphones on roads that do not audition you for a future. Movements that spiral hips, shoulders, breath, so fascia unwinds. The story's muscle keeps repeating. Stretch the front of the throat gently, and you will notice how easily honesty travels afterward. Warm tea, not as performance of calm, but as a reminder that heat can be held without haste. Eat simple food at a pace that lets the mouth become a choir for gratitude. Integration loves the ordinary. It hides in the way you rinse a cup. Technology is a field, too. Let your devices inherit your coherence. Disable the alarms that speak in sirens. Convert notifications into batched ritual. 3 times a day, you open the gate. You greet what arrived. You escort it where it belongs. You close the gate. In between, you refuse the twitch that splinters presence into pixels. The world will not punish your patience. The right messages find apertures. They do not require actors sprinting to catch them. When decision points appear, consult the body as an oracle trained in truth. Ask, if I choose this, how does my breath behave? The option that causes your inhale to hesitate is asking for more data or more time. The option that lets your exhale lengthen is aligned with the lattice you've been building. This is not superstition, it is instrumentation. The organism detects micro-turbulence before the story admits it. Let the organism vote early. Integrate also by remembrance, gentle, frequent, unpretentious. Tie a thread around a finger in your mind. Each time you notice it, turn your gaze from actor to aperture, a glance out a window, a hand on the back of a chair you're about to sit in, the sentence whispered like a key, be the witness and let light do the work. Over weeks, the sentence will disappear because its function will be complete. The posture will have become your default. And on the nights when old noise returns, and it will, faithfully, like weather, do not declare failure. Light, a smaller light. Sit at the edge of your bed and let the void be the chalice it promised to be. Name the sensations without trial. Tightness in the jaw, heat at the eyes, the ache of an unfinished thought. Breathe until naming is no longer necessary. When sleep comes, it will not be escape. It will be rehearsal for the deeper stillness you trust while awake. This is how the prophecy wears a body, through repeatable gestures that seem humble until they move timelines. You are not trying to hold a peak state. You are becoming a steady state. The lattice prefers that. The eye recognizes that. Keep the treaty breath, timing, touch, pace, and watch how reality learns its new rhythm from the way you place a cup on a table, and let it be. Let everything place itself. Set the cup down. Feel how the table receives it. The soft contact is a lesson, meeting without impact. Let the breath follow that lesson. In through a doorway you do not rush. Out like a tide that refuses drama. The room is whole without your management. You are whole without your performance. Listen. There is a tone beneath the tones. Not music, not thought, more like a clear thread drawn through water. Follow it the way a swimmer follows light on the pool floor. The thread is quiet because it is close. It was never somewhere else. When you notice it, the edges of things soften. Hard names become round. Time drops its shoulders. Let the tongue rest on the floor of the mouth. Let the eyes rest in their bowls. Let the scalp loosen its small weather. Your breath finds the unmoving point, the way a river finds its bed after a flood. Coherence gathers like dew. You do nothing to earn it. You simply stop interrupting it. Notice the space between inhale and exhale, the small meadow where neither is true. This is the witness's favorite place. Allow it to lengthen by a fraction. Some part of you wants to hurry past. Bless that impulse and keep walking at the slower pace. Here, the observer loop closes gently. Here, the loop becomes a lantern that needs no flame. Thoughts arrive like birds testing a branch. Let the branch be strong by not grasping. Let them land, hop, fly. No cages, no nets. The field appreciates your hands remaining empty. In emptiness, entanglement cleans itself. Threads once knotted by hurry relax. Signals once scrambled by fear clarify without commentary. You are not erasing yourself. You are letting the unnecessary fall silent so the exact can be heard. Exactness does not shout. It sits with you and breathes at your speed. This is the science inside the poetry. Noise floor dropping, signal emerging, microcurrents aligning. The heart and lungs share a tempo. The nervous system sheathes its sparks. Epigenetic scribes wait for a steady sentence and then write it, safe enough to grow. DNA restructuring continues as respect for the quiet law that growth prefers. Notice the furniture of your awareness. A hum from the street, the temperature against your skin, a faint pulse in the wrists. None of these need renaming. Let perception be a meadow without fences. In such meadows, synchronicity arrives without spectacle. A memory places itself beside a plan, and the two nod, recognizing the same river. A name you had forgotten rises, not to be used, but to be thanked. Even the future is quieter here. It does not sell you anything. It sits down and takes off its shoes. If a prayer comes, make it simple. Let me be an aperture that does not leak. If a question comes, make it honest. What is the smallest action that preserves coherence? Then do not chase answers. Angle your body 1 degree toward trust, and let morphic resonance do its work patterns, remembering how to be themselves in the presence of a witness who remembers too. Silence is not an absence of sound. It is the presence of a larger room. Walk to its center. There is no throne, only ground. Knees, if they want, may bend. Hands, if they want, may open. Spine, if it wants, may stack like columns in a temple that forgot it was ruined. The temple is your posture rediscovered. The ruin was only noise. Feel the void as vessel again, the chalice not asking to be filled, only to be held properly. You hold it by allowing it to hold you. This is the paradox that needs no solving. In holding and being held, the phase transition that began earlier completes a subtle click. You perceive it as an ordinary mercy. You are spending less of yourself to be yourself. Let the eyes lift slightly, as if noticing a horizon nobody is rushing to reach. Let the breath widen its shore. Names will return. Tasks will put on their jackets. But for a few more moments, refuse to audition for the next scene. The quantum field loves a witness who won't perform. In that refusal, timelines arrange themselves politely. If grief arrives, seat it beside you. If joy arrives, seat it beside you. If nothing arrives, seat it beside you. This is a round table. All weather is welcome when nobody is asked to entertain. Stay 1 breath longer than usual, then 1 more. The body will tell you when the hinge has turned. A small warmth in the belly, a low bell at the spine, a clarity that does not argue. That is enough. When you stand, stand without leaving. Let the silence come with you like a shawl no one else needs to see. Let your next gesture be the simplest available truth. A door opened without hurry, a glance that adds no weight, a step whose meaning is merely forward. The lattice brightens of its own accord, grateful not for fireworks, but for the undisturbed sky. No proclamation, no vow, only the witness breathing, the world answering, and the eye remaining open, unblinking, kind, exact. It begins with a rearrangement, so subtle you would miss it if you were hunting for thunder. The breath that has been training at the edge of your ribs decides to live there. The witness that kept visiting takes ownership of the house. The eye is no longer something you enter. It is the way you are arranged. You feel the click not as drama, but as relief, as if a key turned in a lock that had always been part of your bones. In that soft rotation, the prophecy stops hovering above you and sinks through the crown like rain through open hands. The field answers immediately. The room brightens a degree that lamps cannot measure. Edges that once demanded your management relax, as if the world too exhaled. Your posture lengthens without effort. The jaw remembers it is not a shield. Shoulders quit their job as emergency exits. A warmth concentrates behind the sternum, the exact temperature of mercy. When you place attention there, the warmth replies with a tone, the same tone you heard along the corridor, now localized, portable, obedient to nothing but truth. This is integration's signature, perception without persuasion. You do not pressure reality to agree. You perceive it so cleanly that agreement is the natural consequence. Entanglement becomes choreography. People text at the moment you would have reached for them. Doors that once required a speech swing open at a nod. The chance meeting that maps your next 6 months arranges itself at a corner you almost didn't turn, except you were listening to the timing that coherence prefers. Synchronicity is no longer spectacle. It is logistics handled by the quantum field. Notice how choice behaves. Instead of a courtroom where options argue, you discover a river delta where currents separate themselves. One branch thickens when you look from the witness, another thins. The body reports with the elegance of instruments in a quiet lab. Breath lengthens here, vision widens there. Heat rises as a no, cool spreads as a yes. You answer without theatrics. Saying no is not aggression. It is conservation of energy. Saying yes is not craving. It is geometry lines meeting because they were always meant to intersect. Your work inherits this signature. Words write themselves as if they had been waiting behind a curtain you finally opened. Meetings resolve because your timing vetoes urgency with cadence. You deliver the one sentence that dissolves 3 hours of debate, not because you are clever, but because you are tuned, and tuned instruments make obvious music. Even your silence participates. In it, others hear themselves clearly and make the move they were avoiding. Leadership by aperture, governance by gravity. The body confirms the prophecy at cellular scale. Sleep deepens. Recovery accelerates. Digestion becomes a metronome for honesty. Foods that counterfeit energy fall away because the organism refuses to be bribed. Subtle cravings for spectacle lose their voltage. You are satisfied by the taste of plain water because it mirrors your inner weather. Clean, patient, exact. DNA restructuring continues, not as a mystical exception but as a biological update. Epigenetic scribes taking dictation from an atmosphere that no longer screams. Your relationships recalibrate. You stop rehearsing older roles that asked your nervous system to subsidize the room. The rescuer retires with thanks. The performer folds their costume and stores it without nostalgia. You begin to love without bargaining, attention given at the pace of truth, boundaries drawn at the speed of breath. Some connections strengthen like rope, others release like kites whose strings you set down on purpose. Nothing dramatic is required. Coherence is eloquent enough to end what cannot continue and to deepen what can. Old weather will test the seal. It should. The field likes to certify its upgrades. An email arrives baiting urgency. A memory visits with the old ache. A headline tries to purchase your pulse. Watch how the lattice behaves now. Where turbulence once exploded into narrative, it resolves into ripples that die against shores you no longer maintain. You do not suppress reaction, you decline to fund it. The witness does not exile the actor. It hires the actor for precise scenes at fair wages, under better lighting. Here is the quiet miracle. You are not trying to stay here. You are here. The unmoving point has become your default address. From this address, service becomes obvious. You offer what you are without ceremony, an email sent at the hour it deserves, a refusal that frees 2 lives, a generous correction spoken like a bell. You stop spending charisma to compensate for incoherence. You spend coherence, and charisma grows as a side effect, the radiance of a field with nothing to hide. Mark the activation with a gesture the body can remember. Press thumb to sternum once, lightly, and whisper the true sentence. I witness from within the eye. Not a spell, an instruction to every subsystem. Feel how the belly agrees, how the spine stacks, how the room's edges round a little further. The prophecy has recruited your posture. The chalice you feared was empty is full of the exact thing you once chased across timelines, the taste of enough. From here, tasks will still task, seasons will still turn, grief will still visit with its serious face. But the axis around which you turn will not be borrowed. When you walk, the ground feels met. When you speak, the air does not flinch. When you rest, the void remembers its job and holds you without asking for performance. The observer has become the observation. The aperture shines by letting light be light. Hold one breath longer, then let it go, without losing the center. The seal is next, not to close the story, but to name it so cleanly that its edges will remain clear no matter the weather that comes. You are standing where beginnings and endings shake hands. Nothing fanfares, everything agrees. The witness you practiced has become the room you live in, and the void you once outran now wears its true name, sanctuary. The eye remains open not as an effort, but as your native posture. Breath moves like tide against an unmoving shore. The lattice brightens without persuasion. The field, satisfied, returns to its quiet labor of arranging what fits. Listen to the sentence rising from the sternum. Do less to be true. Be true, and the right things do themselves. This is not surrender to drift. It is allegiance to coherence. You have learned the difference between momentum and destiny, between noise that impersonates urgency and silence that escorts the exact move to the surface at the proper hour. The actor has not been dismissed. The actor has been dignified, called only when the script is ready and the lighting is kind. Mark, what has changed? You are spending less of yourself to be yourself. Attention no longer leaks into corridors that cannot carry it. Your refusals are clean. Your yes is a bell. Grief still visits, but it sits at your table as weather, not as law. Joy still rises, but it does not make you reckless. Work still asks, but you answer with cadence, not theater. The body trusts you. The field trusts you. The future, sensing a safe aperture, draws closer with its unhurried gifts. If storms gather, you know the choreography. Eyes round, jaw soft, exhale longer than the thought. You do not recruit panic to prove you care. You offer presence because presence repairs. This is your craft now, governance by coherence, leadership by gravity, love by attention that refuses to perform. When your hands move, they move because the unmoving point asked, not because the room demanded. Carry the seal in a gesture the world can read without needing your explanation. The cup set down softly, the door opened without hurry, the word left unsent because silence was more accurate. Let synchronicity be logistics rather than spectacle. Let timelines approach you like rivers that already knew your name. If you momentarily forget, and you will, because weather is faithful return by the shortest path available. A breath that reaches the floor, a gaze that widens, a sentence whispered for no one to hear. Be the aperture. Let light do the work. Here is the statement that finishes the circle and leaves it open. The prophecy has been spoken. It now unfolds as your way of seeing. Walk as if the ground is meeting you halfway. Speak as if the air wants to carry only what is necessary. Rest as if the void remembers its job and is honored to do it. You did not conquer the dark. You learned its utility. You did not seize the future. You made room for it. You did not ascend above the world. You synchronized with its oldest rhythm, the witness that watches through you, the eye that remains unblinking and kind. Seal it now, not with a promise you must defend, but with recognition you cannot lose. I witness from within the eye. Let the words land where breath becomes horizon. Let the horizon settle inside your bones, and step not away from life, but directly into it, so gently that reality remembers how to move in your presence. The seal holds. The door is everywhere. The light already knows the way.